A question that I frequently get asked is, can I plug my 240 volt brewing system into my dryer outlet or my stove outlet and brew that way? My answer is typically no, unless you have a GFI breaker in your circuit panel. This inline GFI extension cord changes my answer. How's it going? My name is Brian. I'd like to welcome you to another video. If this is your first time here and you'd like to learn more about electric brewing, see product reviews and how-to videos just like this one, consider subscribing, and if you do, don't forget to click that bell so you won't miss a video when it comes out. Now, a quick electrical discussion really quick before we get started here. 240 volts at 20 amps, which this is rated for, equals 4,800 watts. Anything beyond that amount of power, either element or otherwise, you're going to have to look at another solution. So this will power up to 4,800 watts. I probably wouldn't go over like a 4,500 watt element with this. Let's jump into making the extension cord. All right, so first we're going to take a look at how to wire up the GFI breaker. And this particular unit is good for 20 amps, as I stated earlier. And so I'm using number 12 wire, which is also rated for 20 amps. I'm using a SJ00W, which is a water and chemical resistant cord, pretty flexible. And if you notice on the covers for the wires, there is a strip gauge. And so what I've done is I've actually stripped the wire off to match that gauge as closely as possible. It is pretty tight with what I've got. And another note too is you can use an extension cord for this. If you can get a 12 gauge extension cord, that will work just fine. And this unit also, not only does it work for 240 volts, it works for 120 volts. So the way that I'm wiring it is the way that it would be wired for 120 volts. We're going to be using 240 volts, but just a note, if you do want to use it for 120 volt protection, the black is going to go on the gold, the white is going to go on the silver, and of course the green is going to go on the green. So what you have to do is just kind of fan your wires out and kind of get them in position, and then you can slide them in underneath of the terminals, and we'll tighten all those down there. You want to tighten them pretty tight so that you don't have any slippage. All right, and then the reason why they have the strip gauge on there is because there is some strain relief or strain protection on here. This is actually going to clamp down on the shield of the wire and hold it in place, so if something gets pulled on, you're not putting stress on this, you're actually putting stress on the jacket of the cord right there. Now the other thing that does come with this, and I've already completed the input side, so this is where the power comes in, this is where the protected power comes out. One of the things that they do send with this kit is silicone, and I definitely think it's a good idea to go ahead and do it. And what they say is to just go ahead and, I mean, really put it all over. I mean, you want to get it in there and get it squeezed all over the terminals. I mean, you want to completely cover everything up. I mean, just get it. And it's no big deal to use the whole tube because there are two tubes with it. So I say use as much of it as you want to and get everything completely sealed. And the reason for that is if for some reason water should intrude on this side, there's no protection on this side. There is protection on this side. So I think it's more critical on this side that you make sure you get completely covered with silicone. That way, if any water should get in there, you're not going to be in danger of, you know, shorting anything out on that side or getting electrocuted on this side, quite frankly. So I'll go ahead and do the other one and get it all sealed up. One of the things that happened when I was trying to take the covers off is they have some silicone along the edges here where they siliconed this cover on, and those covers were kind of stuck down. They were a little difficult to get off, but not too horrible. Just, you know, you got to pull on them a little bit. So I'm going to use the whole tube, or as much as I can get out of this, to seal up all of these connections and make sure everything is nice and sealed. As you can see, it looks like it's well covered. So definitely want to make sure that you have the correct length that you're going to use for your extension cord or whatever before you do that step, because once you do that and this stuff dries, it's definitely going to be a little bit hard to get off of there. So once we get that done, then it's just going to be a matter of putting the covers on and screwing the screws down. And you can see on there that it's got a pretty good amount of pressure on the cord here. So that makes sure that there's not going to be any slippage or any strain on the other. Make sure you're careful about the covers on there. So I'm going to go ahead and get the other cover put back on, and then we'll talk about the other ends of the wiring that goes in and out of this unit for different applications. All right, now let's talk about getting power through the GFI unit from the wall. This is your typical standard style that is in most modern homes. This would be a dryer plug. And so you have two hot legs or hot sides, if you will. This is the actual neutral bar, and then this would be the ground up top. And when you open this up, you'll see that a lot of these are interchangeable. And most of the time, with this type system that we're putting together now, you can take this neutral actually completely out or not install it in the first place, if I can get it out of there. And we're going to be just using the ground and both of the hot terminals. So what we're going to do, and the other thing with this as well, this is normally meant for a larger gauge wire, 10 gauge or 8 gauge wire, depending on whether it's 50 amp or 30 amp. We're going to be assuming we're using it in a 30 amp configuration. If your dryer or stove plug is different, then obviously you're going to use different terminals for it. But the thing about it is, this small wire is not going to be strain relieved by this large opening. So what I've done is actually got a large piece of plastic tubing I just had here in the brewery. And I'm actually going to put that around here so that whenever I shut this down, that is actually going to provide us with the strain relief we need by clamping down on that wire. So this is really not a lot different than what we just did inside of the GFI terminal box. With this, it doesn't matter whether you put your white or black wire on either one of these terminals. The only one that really matters is just that you make sure you get the ground there. And since we're not using a neutral, there won't be any neutral being used. So the white wire and the black wire are considered hot wires at that point, and then the ground is ground. Let me get these all fastened up and I'll come back and show you what that looks like. All right, so I've got everything wired up. One thing I did want to kind of show you was that with the ground, I couldn't get it to get tight in this little space here, so I actually had to come up to the top of the ground terminal in order to get the ground to actually tighten down like it's supposed to. So as you can see, we've got the white wire here, black wire there. It doesn't matter what the configuration is. And then we've got our piece of plastic hose or tubing here that slides down, that I've got to slide down. And then this is going to actually tighten down. And you can see that with the tubing on there, it actually gives me some strain relief. So if I'm pulling on this, I'm not pulling on the terminals inside. So there is power from your standard dryer outlet. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover every configuration because if you're in an older home, you may have a three wire plug or something like that. But in a more modern 4-wire dryer terminal or stove terminal, this is going to be the configuration you want. Okay, so for the Anvil system, we're going to be using a standard repair type plug. Now I know that this is a 15 amp plug. With the Anvil brewing system running on 240 volts, it does not exceed 15 amps. So I feel plenty safe about recommending this type of plug for it. That way you don't have to switch out the plug on the Anvil brewing system. So we're going to fish the wires through the strain relief and the bottom part of the plug. The silver catches the white wire. The gold catches the black wire, and so on. So I'll put the black wire in the gold terminal over here, tighten it down. White can go in the silver terminal over here, and then you've got the ground terminal here. All right, so then there is the ground wire. Put it in, tighten it down. Then it's just a matter of finding on these plugs, there is like a little locator pin on there. As you can see, corresponds with that there. Push it down, find the locator tab there. Then the screws just screw in at the top. They're a real coarse thread, so they screw in really quickly. And that, and then we've got our strain relief down at the bottom. We'll tighten it down nice and tight. Make sure that any strain that happens to the cord is on the sheathing and not on the terminals inside. And there you go. So you're ready to plug this side into your dryer outlet, plug this into your anvil, and you're brewing safely. All right, so this is the solution that I've been using for my BREWzilla 65 liter, and this is a 30 amp plug. The BREWzilla actually is only a 3500 watt unit, so it doesn't actually use all 30 amps, but this is the plug that comes on it from the factory, 2 straight slots and a ground lug at the bottom. Now I will tell you that this is not a power cord type situation like what we had with the other solution. This is actually a wall mount. And what I've been doing with it, with my system, is I would probably recommend, once we get it attached, you do like a zip tie or something like that and put it actually where it's a part of the cord, just held on here so that it doesn't drag down on your brewery floor, because it's got holes in the back, it's got holes on the bottom. Like I said, it is used to mount on the wall. Enough of that, let's take a look at how we're going to wire it. So this has strain relief at the bottom, has a ground lug, and then 2 hot lugs. So it's going to be, you know, the same thing as before. We're going to slide the wire through here. We're going to hook up the white wire to one side, the black wire to the other side, and then the ground to the middle terminal. And so let me get this all hooked up, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. All right, so here we are, we're all wired up. The white wires going to the right side, the black wires going to the left side. It doesn't matter on these terminals. And then the ground is connected to the green terminal. And then this particular plug has enough room to be able to provide strain relief without having any kind of extra hose or anything like that in there. And then of course this just simply snaps over the top, and then their center screw tightens up. In this video I covered 2 different brewing systems. Obviously there's so many plug configurations, both, you know, in your house or the wall outlet and the brewing systems, that I can't quite cover all of them. But feel free to contact us on our social media links. You know, send me a private message at any one of our links. I'll put them down here below, or you can reach me at the email address here on the screen now. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up. We certainly appreciate it. If you know somebody that's looking for this type of solution, be sure and share the video with them so that people can see how to protect themselves while brewing with that 240 volts, which in my opinion is the way to go. This has been Brian for Short Circuited Brewers. We'll see you on that next video.